Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Lauren Grobe, Director of Marketing at OSNexus, and I'll be introducing our presenters today. Before we get started, I'd like to point out the question box in the bottom middle of your screen, where you can submit questions anytime during the presentation, and we'll be doing a Q&A at the end of the webinar. I'd like to introduce our speakers today. From Veeam, we have Steve Firms, Senior Solutions Architect for Product Management Alliances. From Seagate, we have Joe Shazermet, Senior Solutions Engineering Manager. And from OSNexus, our speaker is Steve Umbahaker, CEO and CTO. So without further ado, let's get started, and I'll pass it off to our presenters.
All right, thanks, Lauren. Here's the quick agenda. We're going to start off just going into at a high level into various malware scenarios, kind of cybersecurity attacks that different types of those, and then we're going to dive into how we help protect your environment using immutability features in object storage with Veeam backups, or having Veeam backup repositories set up with object storage with immutability. And then we're going to go into some hardware solutions and a little bit on Seagate Live Cloud, and then into some of the unique features that optimize our object storage for Veeam backups. And then finally, we'll talk about double layer erasure coding and some techniques like that for really large Veeam environments. So with that, I'm going to pass the baton over to Steve to go over some of these scenarios.
Thanks, Steve. So we talk about malware. There's many ways and many scenarios that they can use, call them attack vectors. And it's important to have a solution that will accommodate and detect all of these scenarios, right? Now, the first one is the sleeping malware. Malware can be on your systems days, weeks, months, until the actual attack occurs. So it's extremely critical to, detect and get rid of this malware, as soon as possible. So scenario one is definitely the first point of attack that we want to go at. Scenario two is the attack has already begun. You're getting your data is being encrypted or deleted, moved around, all that fun stuff they do. But the actual malware is still present, right? So it hasn't, deleted itself or hidden itself. Then you move into scenario three, where you're going into the actual deletion again, the malware attack. But in this case, the malware has actually either removed itself completely from the system, or it's hiding now in memory. So two and three are, the attack is underway, and you need to certainly solve that, but you also need to track down that malware as well. And the last scenario is probably one of the more difficult ones. This is where there is a malware attack, but it's remote. So it's not actually residing on your system. It is being, accessing and corrupting the data externally. Next one, Steve. And this is where, Veeam has solutions for all of the scenarios, right? So we talk about a secure restore. This is our ability to, hey, I've got an attack's going on. I need to restore my information. You don't want to restore that malware back onto it. So this is that scenario where, scenario two, where you actually have the attacks going on, but the malware is still present. So it's been captured during a backup. Well, you don't want to restore, the virus, the malware back into the environment that you're trying to recover. So the way we do this is we stage the restore, and we actually can run the antivirus software malware detection. Additionally, we can go through and using some Yara scans and rules that you have built, we can now actually go out and find those binaries before it's actually begun. So that'd be scenario one. And then we have the detection of the encrypted data, and this is where AI and machine learning, we have this ability to go through and identify if things have changed. We can see if like an example, if the malware is encrypting the data, we can detect that. We can identify that, hey, the data wasn't encrypted yesterday, now it is. If they've moved the data or deleted the data, we can detect that there's a delta in an abnormal delta in the backups, right? So if your backup usually backs up a terabyte of data, and now it's backing up a few gig, something may be up. And just the opposite, right? So if you had a small server that only had a few terabytes, now all of a sudden it was 100 terabytes, maybe that's the system where they moved your data to hide it. That type of stuff can be used to identify as well that, it may be normal, right? But it may be something that's malicious, and it'll flag it and, allow you to do your investigation into it.
And then, and that leads us right into the importance of immutability as sort of like, unwinding the encryption and preventing the encryption from taking place at all. So this slide, this slide really goes into a bit of one of the core features of object storage and of the OSNexus Seagate platform here. So when you enable encryption on the bucket, what you're really doing is, or not encryption, but when you're creating the buckets for Veeam, you want to turn on what's called immutability. And there's a couple of modes there. There's governance and compliance mode. The governance mode is a little bit more flexible. If you go and try to delete things, it'll prevent that. But governance mode is a mode where there's some administrative overrides that you could use to go and delete a bucket. There was like some data there, and it was for, say, a customer that's no longer using the object store. You could use an override in governance mode. Compliance mode is more for governance compliance, and there's no overloads or overrides for that, rather. And in that mode, there's just no way to delete the data for that lifespan of immutability. So what we've done with OSNexus and our integration with Veeam is made it so that it integrates with the Veeam Ready. I'm sorry, Steve, I keep forgetting it. Veeam Ready verified for is that the right?
Yeah, it's Veeam Ready object with immutability, and it's a verification process, validation process.
We've taken it through all of that, and as well as integrated it with the detection logic that Veeam has to figure out how much free space is available, which is the SOS API, so that when the object store starts to fill, Veeam can redirect those backups to another layer. One other thing I wanted to speak to is a little bit on, well, what if somebody writes a script to try to go and delete all of that data? Is it going to put these delete markers in there? And I was just speaking with Joe about this and Steve about this. If you go and try to delete a version of an object, it's just going to block that version of the object with immutability on, just prevents that from happening. But if you just give it if you had some kind of script that was just arbitrarily going through trying to delete things, it just makes a new version of that object and puts a new delete marker on the front of that, and your data is always protected. So those examples that Steve was giving in the last slide, where the software comes in and it tries to delete data or tries to encrypt it, that's really, if you don't have immutability. If you have immutability on, but allowing changes to put in like new versions of the object, you'll still have that old version. If you have immutability enabled in a compliance or governance mode, it's not even going to allow those new versions to go in. You'll just get a delete marker if they're trying to delete just the arbitrary file name or object name. But trying to delete a specific version is just going to disallow that. So you're just protected against those scenarios, and don't have to worry about those ransomware attacks, because your data is frozen for some set period of time. Joe, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, the beauty of object storage, for Brett and Andy who are on the call, is that, if you're file guys maybe and you're not object guys, is that you've got the ability through versioning. It's just like snapshotting, and even if you delete it, that's just the current version is set to delete. If you went into an API viewer like CyberDuck and you actually looked at it, you'd see that the current state deleted is set to true. The previous state, when it was undeleted, is set to false. So you can just Veeam can go in and restore that right back to the original data So it can't be deleted from a malicious internal attack if it's in governance mode. And the retention is going to be controlled by Veeam at the object level. And then at the bucket level in Seagate and Live Cloud, we're going to set versioning, which gives it all those, protects that data with immutability so that any change creates a new object, so it can always be restored to previous version. Those are all strong controls and easily applied by backup applications like Veeam that give you the ransomware protection, that you're really looking for. But think of versioning like snapshots, right? And retention is obviously retention. So
Perfect. Yeah. And the Veeam optimizations that we've done, I'll go into that in the next slide. But the SOS API, as I mentioned, this communicates back to Veeam how much free space is available in a object storage backup repository. And we've integrated the full line of Seagate hardware, so we have a variety of different solutions with different scalability, with scalability to many tens of petabytes with core vaults and smaller scale solutions as well, using like the 2U12s. And then there's also integration in Seagate Live Cloud. You can not only use on-prem object storage, but cloud-based. Yes, good, Joe, did you want to?
Yeah, and so with Live Cloud, we're kind of, everyone's over Seagate. We've been around for a very long time. We manufacture 40% of all the storage in the world every day. So, rough and tough, half the data in the world's going on this one way or another. We launched our cloud division to really contain costs, because our costs were going through the roof on a monthly basis out in the cloud as we tried. We have I've been told, we have the world's second largest global supply chain. So trying to manage all that data across all those manufacturing sites globally was a big problem. Going to the cloud fixed all that, but then the bill was ginormous. So we deployed our own product and began to invite other companies into that. So we got on the same reason Amazon got into it. But we're a value player because we manufacture mainly, and we can do it a lot cheaper. So we deliver a premium product at a fraction of the cost of the big boys. And that allows our customers to store more data online available instead of offline, like in an archive, although nothing wrong with that if that's all you need. But so our customers can store more data for longer at a lower cost. We also have no additional fees whatsoever other than daily average utilization rate. So let's say you're hitting the data a lot, you're not going to get a bigger bill that month. It's not going to change it whatsoever. We only have one billing rate, and that's just how much data you're using on an average daily basis. And everyone else is going to have lots of additional fees. Even the other discount vendors, if you hit it more than a certain amount, you fall into their extra fee category. So they'll say they don't until they start hitting the data, and then all of a sudden, surprise, you get a bigger bill. So price certainty is and scale are why people come to us. We give them an easier way to do that. And we have a lot of Veeam customers, and we do a lot of business with OSNexus. We're closely partnered because we do the on-prem systems and we do the cloud piece. So we have partners that do the entire bundle: the on-prem storage, Veeam backup, and then the cloud, and it's all one nice, neat bundle. So
yeah, you can do it all CapEx or OpEx, get different ways of tackling that challenge. And I think that, no egress fee is really important as well. When you're going and testing your DR site, knowing that, hey, downloading a bunch of VMs, the backups of those from a Veeam object store, knowing that that's not going to spike the bill.
Yeah, and then one little thing on the way out the door on that one is that we only do enterprise support. So our customers, like, I'm a dedicated engineer who works, I have about 30 accounts or so, and they call me every day, and then I get online with them. We do stuff. So we do have really good customer support. You can actually talk to somebody. We'll assist you in setup, testing, performance runs, application integration. We do all that for free. So that's something you don't get from other cloud vendors. So we're an enterprise only. We don't do small individual users and stuff like that. So we have enterprise support, and it comes with the cost. We don't charge anything extra for that. That's just, if you do business with us, you get that.
That's huge. Yeah. And then next, diving into a little bit on how we optimize for Veeam. Veeam can generate a lot of small files, and as you are writing data into the object store, that can impact performance. You want to use erasure coding to kind of get the best value out of your object storage investment. So typically you'll use like an 8+3 or even 16+3 erasure coding on a bigger cluster. but that can really impact performance and then cause a lot of like extra space getting wasted through padding when you're trying to erasure code really small 1K or 4K files. So what the software does automatically is as Veeam's pushing the data in there, it automatically marks the data for different storage classes depending on the size of the object being uploaded. So if it's small, like metadata files that are like 1K or below 32 kilobytes, it's dynamically going to go put that into like standard storage class versus a deep archive storage class. And you can tune those rules if you wanted to get adjusted in different ways. But the platform just makes it so much easier to just have an optimized, fast Veeam experience because it's putting the data in the optimal location for you. All right. This slide gets into just one and done, as Joe would say. You just put the systems in place, and as you expand by adding new sites and adding more and more systems, you don't have to worry about doing a forklift upgrade to go and replace the equipment and copy everything from an old cluster to a new cluster. You can just keep expanding it and phase out the old equipment, and that data will flow to the remaining nodes. We just reweight those old systems when they're ready to be phased out to 0, and that will tell it to move all the data into the remaining systems. And then this whole picture just slides to the left, and you add new expansions, and the whole thing just rolls forward in perpetuity. So that's really important, having 0 downtime, especially when you're providing a backup recovery service with your object storage, and this lets you do that with ease. And one other element here I wanted to highlight is that when we're using clusters or when using these Core Vault units, the Seagate Core Vault units in these scale-out clusters, here you can see 2 servers. Each one gets a Core Vault in this particular configuration. We're getting the benefit of localized hardware erasure coding. So if you've got a object store that is like a stretch cluster that spans sites, or even if it's all in a couple of racks, the erasure coding is going to repair any bad drives for us. It's going to do that within a few hours. And so you have the ability to have multiple drive failures across every node of the cluster at the same time. And you've got erasure coding at the software level to protect across the entire cluster. So this gives you like bulletproof upon bulletproof, which gets you up to these 14 nines of uptime. That comes from some Markov chain analysis that was done by some research scientists over at Seagate that have developed tools on how to calculate durability on using stacked levels of erasure coding and RAID. So just a fantastic way to make your backups absolutely bulletproof. You don't need to do configurations at this scale, but it needs to the small size cluster that we do for these our 4-node cluster. But just a great way to make backups bulletproof. And then the last thing I want to highlight around our object storage features is the ability to set up 2 zones and bidirectionally replicate between them. So if you were driving backups to US East 1, those are going to automatically replicate back to West, and vice versa. If you've got backups in routing to buckets in West, those buckets and all the objects within them are real-time being replicated to East. And that also makes it so that you can do a failover across sites. And all you have to do is move the FQDN, the fully qualified domain name for the object store from one site to the other, and the Veeam backups will just continue to run. And if this site was disconnected, it will automatically start to replicate those changes back to the other site once the WAN link comes back online. So just a great way to also just totally replicate, get a complete copy of your Veeam backups to another region. And you can add more than one region. You can add, you set up a primary region, and then you can set up bidirectional replication to as many additional regions as you like. That takes us to Q&A. Lauren, any questions there?
Yeah, there's a couple of questions here. The first one is, can you share a bit about the deployment process, how long it takes, how it works?
Yeah, we send out a pre-go live checklist ahead of time, and that's where we collect all the IP addresses. Usually the networking is one of the steps that takes the longest to go and get through. And so with that pre-go live checklist, we get the IP addresses for and names for the host names for like the NTP server, DNS servers, all the IPs that we'll be applying to the boxes. And then when we do the deployment, when it comes time to deployment time, it's usually the whole thing, including the cluster, the object storage setup and configuration is all done within a couple of hours. It really goes quite quick. It's about 5 or 6 steps right through the QuantaStore web UI. And then we're on to configuring Veeam to use it as a backup repository. So really quick configuration. And OSNexus provides all the assistance with that complete setup. It's all included with the software subscription. And it's all done over Zoom typically.
Great. The next one is how is support handled on the hardware and software side?
That's another great question. Yeah, usually, customers are concerned, hey, who do I call first? Do I call Seagate? Do I call OSNexus? It's really simple. You just always contact OSNexus. We have a global 24/7 support team. You just email support@osnexus.com, and then our team is there to assist and get whatever it might be sorted, whether it's hardware or software. If it's a hardware item, we'll collect the logs and open up a ticket on the Seagate side for you to go and help get that RMA process accelerated. So we've got a linkage between those support organization, a strong link between OSNexus and Seagate to just make that a real easy experience. So you don't have to figure out who to call. You just always call OSNexus.
Awesome. Well, that was all the questions we had today. So thanks to our speakers, Steve, and Joe, and to all of our attendees. Great day.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, everybody.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.